After they couldn't get a trade done for Stafford and couldn't get Fields re-signed, they pivoted to Aaron Rodgers. So Aaron Rodgers right now was their third choice. Okay. Your reaction?
Listen, I mean, Schefter is in the information business. Now, by the way, all the people in the information business, none of us knew Amon-Ra St. Brown got that knee surgery. So, I don't even know what the information business is these days. But he is certainly not in the wrong information business. Right. And so what I think made everybody's eyes perk up there, or ears perk up, is, wait, they would have preferred Fields? And also did they lowball Fields, or did they offer Fields the same thing the Jets did? And Fields is like, no, I'd rather go to the Jets. That is news. And
has that come out?
No, that's what I'm saying. But that's news, and that's odd news to me, right? It is not at all surprising they would have rather had Matt Stafford.
Right.
And I think that if they had gotten Matt Stafford, then I think you look at them as a real contender-ish team. I would. Now, I probably hold Matt Stafford in a higher regard than most.
Think most people would look at him.
But so I do think that whether he was their second or third option, now that he is there, and we don't have to look at it as a hypothetical anymore, if you really do, and I'll maybe do this later because I'll let you respond to this piece of it. If you just go team for team in the AFC and say, hey, rank the quarterback situations, the Steelers didn't come up much higher. They're not going to end up much higher in that hierarchy this year than they were last year with Russ and Justin Fields there. As far as what quarterback situation would you rather have? You did it differently.
I did opponents.
Yeah, you did it as far as who they're playing. I saw that, but it's a similar thing. But it's not just, I guess what I'm saying.
Where do you have them? Did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there are only two teams in the AFC and maybe only 3 or 4 in the whole league that definitively have a worse quarterback situation than the Steelers. In the AFC, the only 2 teams that I think clearly are in a worse spot than the Steelers are Cleveland and the Colts. And then the one that to me is a close call is the Jets. But if this report is true, the Steelers are saying the Jets are in a better situation because that's the guy we wanted. And so, now do I think I think the Steelers have a better quarterback right now than the Titans because Cam Ward's going to, a rookie, but that might not be the case in 2 months.
You're just saying
you know what I mean? But their situation is the Titans obviously love their situation. They just took quarterback number 1 overall. They love it. So last year, how many, when they had Russ and Fields, it would have been a very similar thing. Who do they have a better quarterback situation than? Probably still would have been Indy and Cleveland.
Yeah.
And, and that's really the Raiders also last year, but that's a different spot.
This has to be spin, what Schefter reported. Now, I don't doubt for a second that somebody from the Steelers told him this, or maybe multiple people told him this. I think that happened, but I think the Steelers are spinning it to get away from the narrative that Rodgers has them in the palm of his hand. They've been waiting look at what he did to the mighty, mighty Steelers in their 6 Super Bowls. He's playing them like a flute. He's making them wait all this time. He doesn't have to do this, doesn't have to do, I think this is to get away from that because as Nick said, I heard very little about them wanting to bring back Fields. And if you love Fields so much, I get it why you benched him, but why didn't you bring him back when Russell started struggling and, or at least use him more? Okay? And if you liked Fields, Fields still is a better situation than Rodgers. Let's say they brought Fields back right now. At least there's the possibility. He went 4-2 with you. He showed you some promise. The possibility of, he could be our long-term guy.
Another year in the system.
And if you're Fields and the Steelers, it's Steelers-Jets. Steelers-Jets. I think I'm picking the Steelers as far as what's a better franchise. And what will be my second year in the system for a guy that has bounced from system to system throughout his short career. So I just don't see any reasonable reason to think they wanted Fields and just couldn't get him. They had to settle for Rodgers. I think this is absolute spin.
To your original thesis that who's better than him, from Ben Solak, Rodgers' completion percentage over expectation was -5% per NFL Next Gen, better than Cooper Rush and Anthony Richardson. That's it. So I don't know. The legacy of Rodgers seems to be clouding the Steelers' decision-making process.
It seems like every single thing about this, and I know you guys talked about this some, and we've talked about it a fair amount, it feels to me like the Steelers are not operating like a team whose sole goal is to win their 7th championship.
Oh, no.
It feels to me like they are operating as a team whose biggest goal is to break the years without a playoff victory. And how embarrassing that is for them, and how much of a shadow it has cast for Tomlin, to where now all of a sudden the never having a losing season is like a double-edged sword type of thing, where it's like a compliment insult because they haven't won a playoff game since 2016. And I just don't think they are operating the way I would want my team to operate, which is, man, we need to be trying to become one of 32, as opposed to operating as if we just want to be 13 of 32 for another year and steal a playoff victory.
But I think I hear you, because they're stuck in the middle, right? Best case scenario with Rodgers, they're still going to be stuck in somewhere in the middle. They weren't going, even if they started Mason Rudolph, they weren't going to be the worst team in the league. That's just not, and it's hard to ask a Mike Tomlin or any coach, really, particularly one, though, who has the success that he has and has a formula that gets you half the wins, 8, 9 wins in a season every year. It's hard for him to just say, hey, we're just going to be bad this year. Because, again, they wouldn't be bad enough to have the top pick. Now, they still have the draft capital they got, and maybe they're thinking, look, we're going to be able to utilize that anyway to maybe move up and get a guy we want. Let's go for it. I do think in his mind, Tomlin really feels like if Aaron is 75% of the player he used to be, or he was the last two, when he last MVP, then we can
I think that, Wildes, you are totally correct that Aaron Rodgers, the legend, casts a massive shadow over a lot of people in the NFL, on TV, current, former players, analysts' evaluation of him.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people still look at Aaron Rodgers as, oh, listen, he's not an MVP anymore, but he's still clearly, a top 10. He's still Aaron Rodgers. He's still, in that top 10. And I look at him and I'm like, I think he is clearly and obviously not as good as Geno Smith, who the Raiders added. Like, to me, that's not like a controversial opinion to me.
Of the whole Achilles, I mean, they're probably also looking at like, okay, this year, he won't get back to what he used to be, but he'll be better than he was last year, further away from the Achilles.
I understand that. I think a lot of how you view Rodgers has to do with how you viewed his final year in Green Bay.
Right. That's
if you viewed it the way I did, and I think you did, which is, this is a player that quickly has gone on the downslope, then there's less optimism surrounding when he gets back to full health, because we thought that player wasn't a great player anymore. If you looked at that as, it was a blip of a year, but he was the 2 years prior he was MVP, then you can convince yourself. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.